Okay, we are in front of our Ram family group. Me and Mr. Franklin have combined. This happens every Tuesday, and we've decided to combine for our live podcast to knock it out. This is going to be Season 4, Episode 3, History After Hours podcast. So we've got a lot of very, very eager students. They all look like they're ready to talk. Actually, they haven't said anything yet. But there are people here, even though you might not believe it. So we'll pose the question, and we'll see if we'll get anybody. If not, we're going to ramble about whatever we want. So does anyone out there have any question, anything at all? The thing about Ram Fam is they haven't been in a class together all year. So a lot of them don't know everybody else, and they're all
embarrassed to speak in front of one
another.
Maybe.
That, if they had been in this class the whole time, it would be different.
Think we could guilt somebody into coming up?
Maybe.
Oh, wow.
Participation points for my
These
class.
are juniors and seniors, right?
Yep.
People who ought to have opinions.
And they don't.
Who ought to be curious about life.
They just look scared and alone. All right. Well,
stress level's high. I'm hearing from a lot of kids, though, coming through the halls. Apparently you have something major coming up for them.
Me? Nothing.
A thing, maybe.
Test.
Oh, a test or two. Yeah. All right. So maybe that's what it is. They're all stressed out and they don't want to.
Well, let's talk about the. We'll briefly go through some of this politics of the day.
All right.
Trump has picked a Supreme Court justice named Kavanaugh.
Sure.
And it seemed fine. Everything was rolling. A lot of Republicans are going to, obviously, the Senate.
There were a lot
dominated.
of Democrats were on his side too. He had enough votes.
Yeah, he was going to go through, and I didn't see anything coming up. But then, what was it? 2 weeks ago now, maybe early last week, whatever it was.
A week and a half, yeah.
There was a woman who came forward and said she was basically sexually assaulted in high school by this potential Supreme Court justice.
Mm-hmm.
Now the problem is the evidence is not clear. It's
memory versus memory.
It's
apparently.
memory. Yeah, it's going to be he said, she said kind of thing. So it's going to be interesting to see how. And just recently, by the way, a second person has now came out
right
and made allegations. But these are just allegations. So the question is, can two unfounded allegations, can they really bring?
Do you have corroboration because of multiple? Well, multiple. It's two, but there's a potential third, I think, from what I heard as well. Does that add credence to the first one then, if a second one comes out?
Yes.
Though I think so, but I don't know what they're going to do with that.
But still, again, if there's no hardcore evidence, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, obviously, Republicans are screaming it's political. Democrats,
right,
are digging their heels in, saying, no, we got to get to the bottom of this either way, which I think is true probably at this point.
Well, what's the big rush? I mean, let's think about that for a second. What I find interesting about that situation, aside from, is that where you were going to go with that?
No, I was just gonna
Okay, no, hold on. All right, we have a question or comment.
Okay, I was just going to ask whether or not you thought it was important to keep the Supreme Court balanced or not, or whether there should be more like conservative judges or more liberal judges.
I always like balance. That's just the way I do things. So I know that people will, and I think that moderate judges can lean either direction that they need to, depending on the circumstance. That's why I think that's a better plan. Maybe this would be, and from what I had heard about Kavanaugh, I mean, some people scream out of, he's going to be this conservative judge that's going to take these certain rights away, but there's no proof of that. I mean, he's made some statements, but most of his judiciary decisions have been fairly moderate as far as what I've heard or read. So I don't know that he's necessarily this judicial threat to the liberal side of things. But this is kind of a potential game changer then, if there's any credence to this at all, right?
Yeah.
So what I was going to say was why is there this? If I listen to people like Mitch McConnell or this guy Grassley, who's on the Judiciary Committee, who controls a lot of stuff, they seem to be in a real hurry to get this pushed through. And even McConnell himself said, we're going to plow through and we're going to make this decision and we're going to vote this out and we're going to get the guy in. You don't have to rush this process. And the evidence of that is with Merrick Garland, who was...
Where the Republicans dug in for a year,
right,
saying they didn't have to pick anybody.
They left a vacant seat for an entire year of Obama's presidency and were perfectly willing to hold that and let it be what it was. Now all of a sudden they're in a hurry and we can't stop this process. We've got to vote. We got to do it right now. Well, that's hypocrisy at work, in my opinion. And so the idea that you shouldn't stop and really investigate this thoroughly, get the FBI involved. Like that's pretty stupid.
Well, the Supreme Court justices, according to the Constitution, have lifetime appointments.
Right.
One of the reasons is
why do we do that? By the way,
one of the reasons is so they didn't have to worry. Of course, used to people drop dead at like 60, so it wasn't a big deal. But one of the reasons is you can outlive presidents. So you don't have to worry about making political decisions. So like, for instance, if I rule on this case a conservative way, but there's a Democratic president or a liberal president, he can't fire me. Like I can do what I think is right instead of worrying about politics. But we have gotten into such a political sphere with picking the president or picking the justices.
Aren't we the only country that has lifetime appointment judges?
Oh, I don't know.
It seems like I heard that, but I don't know if that's true. We could ask Nixon maybe.
And I mean, Alexander Hamilton wanted lifetime appointments for the Senate and the House too. He was, there's ways you can argue all this out, but I don't know. I mean, so obviously these justices, it's important. I think the Republicans are in a situation now, if they rush this through, it's just going to make the Democrats even more livid. And then,
do you think that has an impact on the midterms then?
Yes, because it'll seem like they're covering up something. They really the Republicans should let the FBI just investigate. Let's get to the bottom of it. Give it a couple weeks. See if they have any concrete evidence.
But should and would are two different things. Will they actually follow through on that? It makes more sense that they would do that, but I don't know. They seem to be in a real hurry.
Well, to their credit, they did in 1990? Clarence Thomas?
93, I want to say, maybe.
Somewhere it was under George H.W. Bush, so it was before 92 or before.
Okay.
I want to say or 90, 91, somewhere. Right. Anyhow, that was huge, though. That was so much hoopla.
Mm-hmm.
But they've done it before. The FBI investigated. And, if it comes out that there's no real evidence, then I think, if there's no real evidence. Now, these are credible witnesses.
Circumstantial evidence is evidence, though. People like to, I don't know, it's weird on shows. They go, well, it's just a circumstantial case. Circumstantial evidence is good evidence if you have compounded enough and you lay it's like layering up. Like just because you don't have a smoking gun scenario or some sort of CSI moment where you have like a DNA thing, that doesn't mean that there's not a compounding of evidence that can sway your judgment.
Right. The second person that's come out, though, that helps, obviously, weighting the case. But, there's other people that say they don't recall, they were there, they don't remember any of this.
Right.
I mean, so we'll just kind of see how it plays.
Well, how do you think that they best determine that then? Do you is it better to wait and pull back and just say, look, we need to really figure this out and let each side tell their side of the story under oath? That's the part where we get the FBI involved, because then they can hold you accountable for what you say. If you're just talking to the committee, if you're just talking to this Judiciary Committee, there's no so you lied to the committee. There's no ramification for that other than they can just go, shake a finger at you. But you lie to the FBI, that's prison. So that's why people are saying we should have this whole testimony, let's investigate it that way, right, so that people are going to be urged to be more honest and forthcoming. Because if you lie and perjure yourself there's a much more stringent response.
We definitely don't want to promote the fact that somebody can just allege anything,
right,
and then your career is over.
Right, yeah, true.
But, I mean, we got a president who was people don't remember this, but he had 19 women come forward that said he has sexually assaulted them. And once he became president, didn't matter.
Right. I haven't heard it. Are there lawsuits still pending?
I think once he became president, that kind of, you can't really, I think it has to wait until after he's done.
Huh.
It's kind of like you can't indict the president. You can't sue the president. So it's like when he became president, those 19 women now just have to, I guess, wait or get paid off. Like, who knows? But that, I guess it's tough for Trump having to speak out about stuff like this, considering the amount of women that came out and accused him. But he categorically denied it, just like everybody else. Anyhow, that's what politics is doing right now. But I don't know of anything else really that's rolling. Oh yeah, we have national park people leaving.
All right.
Godspeed. Be careful.
Enjoy your journey.
Okay. Anything else politically that we need to go over before I go through some of these questions?
That's the big thing, though. That the whole Kavanaugh thing is huge, right? So that's sort of dominating. I think they're gonna, like the Rosen Stein thing. Have you seen this, where he allegedly said some negative things about Trump? What's his first name? I don't remember.
Rob
Rosenstein is the acting deputy director, and he is sort of governing this Mueller investigation. So
because the attorney general recused
himself, right? So if he gets in trouble because he allegedly said some things negative about Trump, that he ought to be overthrown or secretly recorded so they could invoke the 25th Amendment and get him out. If he said those things, then even if it was in jest, like some people have suggested, he says he didn't do it. But if you throw that guy out, if he gets fired, all of a sudden you get a new guy in who may support the president, who could end the investigation into him, and all of that investigating work for what now, 2 years or something?
Yep.
All of that would sort of disappear, I suppose, which could have major ramifications as well. So we'll see where that goes.
I did have some students. By the way, students, if y'all think of anything you want to ask, feel free. However, I had some students submit some stuff, and I give my students participation points for doing some of this. Anna Tapp said, who are your it says top 5 people in American history that never became president that you think should have? Well, that's a tough question without thinking it through.
Are we thinking about people who lost elections that maybe would have done a better job than the people who actually won?
That's one way. Or popular vote. More people voted for them, but they still lost because of the Electoral College. That would be
Al Gore, Hillary Clinton. Who else is on that list?
Hillary Clinton, I talk about this in my class. Like, John Adams, to me, is one of the most qualified people to ever be president. Thomas Jefferson. I mean, when you're Secretary of State and Vice President, you've done a lot. Mm-hmm. Hillary Clinton was set up to be in that conversation of the most qualified. And if you're talking about political experience, elected to office, all that, the most qualified person, she could have been in that conversation. And instead, she gets beat by the least qualified person as far as political experience and being elected at office or military experience. I mean,
not to beat a dead horse, but is he the least qualified person to ever become president?
Yes, because he wasn't in the military. He's never held a political office. He's just a businessman, and we've never had that. Now we've had business. Ronald Reagan was an actor,
but he held political office.
But he became governor of California first. We've had generals, that's all they did, and then they became president. But being a general qualifies you to some degree because your commander-in-chief is president. So that's at least something tied to what you're actually doing. Mm-hmm. Being a CEO of a business is not qualified. You're not running a business. It's a whole different thing when you're public office. Well, being the president would be horrific to do anyway, but yeah. So that's just interesting that we had maybe the most qualified person going up against the least, and nobody wanted either of them. What's funny is, like, Bernie represented change from the Democrat side, and Trump represented change from the. So I think people voted for change, and they couldn't vote for Bernie, so I will vote for Trump because Hillary would have been
more of the same.
More of the same, yeah.
That's got to be a factor.
That had to be, and I think if Bernie had, I actually said it on this podcast, season 2. I said, if Bernie gets the nomination over Hillary, he'll spend the entire campaign trying to explain to Americans what socialism means, and he wouldn't win. Now, looking back, he had a better chance, I guess, than Clinton did.
I think he was more electable, yeah. In retrospect, all of that's easier to see, I suppose. But, yeah, at the moment, it was – socialism has such a gigantically negative connotation in this country because we've vilified the word, because we associate it with Stalinist style communism or Ho Chi Minh in the Vietnam experience because we were really against him, or Mao Zedong, or the Cuban experience under Castro. We associate anything along those lines, even if it is in our benefit to have a socialist style program, which you live under a socialist program, by the way. I don't know if you realize that or not. You're in a public school. That's socialism at work. We have a police force, we have a fire department, we have an ambulance service, we have first responders, we have an interstate system, we have a working voluntary military. All of that is socialism. All of it. We're paying taxes to support these things. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, things that the older generations of people in this country really, really love, especially Medicare and Social Security. And you can't touch that because those are entrenched, enshrined institutions. That's socialism. And so all these people who are about to cash their Social Security check or their Medicaid check to help them, Medicare check to help them with their bills, who are down on socialism, give that money back and see how well you fare. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just people don't understand the real word. And therefore, because people take it and use it and they put devil horns on it and oh my God, socialism's coming to get us. Calm down, because it's already here.
Yeah.
We just don't go with full force with it, I suppose. It's not an evil institution. It's about helping people. It's about helping society with tax dollars. And what else are tax dollars going to be used for? Unless you don't do that, you know what else we're going to do with it? We're going to invest more in rich people.
Yeah, most Americans don't know this stuff. That's like that guy that screamed at Obama, I want the government to keep their hands off my Medicare. It's like, where do you think that comes from? But I mean, once again, and you know what I get mad at is like, I hear commentators say, well, they don't teach this in school. I do. If you're in my class, I force you to hear some of this madness. But I have students that come to 11th grade that never really realize that public education is socialism. I mean, it's what we all pay for to educate everybody. And no matter how much money you have, you get educated. And what's funny is or interesting is the people that want change are, generally speaking, people that are hurting in our country.
Right.
But a lot of times they vote against their own interest. They vote for people that's going to make the rich richer and the poor poorer. And I don't know if that's ignorance or, I mean, all political parties, what's funny, just look at the debates. They're going to raise up the middle class. They're going to, everybody says that no matter what side.
Campaigning's about persuasion. And the follow through is most people aren't that invested in what politics actually is on the ground, and so they just hear people say things and they go, yeah, that sounds good, it feels right, I'm going to vote how I feel rather than using a logistical system to actually know what I'm voting for or who I'm voting for or what they might do, or even following up on them after they get involved, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what your legislators are doing? Do you know what they're actually doing on a day-to-day basis? Probably they're campaigning is probably what they're doing. They're probably fundraising instead of actually voting on legislation. That's a problem. But most people just kind of let it, well, apparently it works, so we just let it go. And people go, well, politics is boring. Yeah, as long as you think that and you don't get involved, it's going to continue to run over you.
By the way, we went way off the question. So here we go. Here's my as an American history teacher, here we go.
Okay.
Ben Franklin could have been president, too old. Alexander Hamilton easily could have been president. Everybody hated him. Who else? Henry Clay should have been president, and he just should have been president. And he just should have been president. The reason he wasn't is because he went up against a juggernaut in Andrew Jackson and got destroyed. William Jennings Bryan should have been president, but he got bought out with money. The Rockefellers, Carnegies, they gave a bunch of money to William Jennings Bryan to become president.
Should there have been a Rockefeller president?
I mean, should have. I don't know.
I mean, could there have been? I suppose.
Maybe.
We had governors, right?
Yeah, it was such a weird time, though.
We had a governor in this state.
Yeah, that was a time where rich people weren't necessarily running for political position, but they were buying better communicators to be the spokesperson for the rich, like Brian. We didn't have – it was really Nelson Rockefeller. That was the first one. This is the Nelson Rockefellers, I guess, what was it, mid-20th century. He ran for president, became vice president. So, yeah, William Jennings Bryan, Henry Clay. That's my top two that should have been president, never were. And you could probably make an argument for Gore, I guess.
No, I'm just going to bow to your list because you're the U.S. guy, so I'll agree with
poor
all
Henry
that.
Clay. He ran 4 times, lost all 4 times. And because of his death, we had the big escalation to the Civil War because he was the compromising force throughout the 19th century. Okay.
What else you got?
Al, let's do a world history.
All right.
Jesus says, if Napoleon didn't fail to dominate Russia, how do you think the story would have gone?
There's always those what ifs.
I know. These are counterfactuals.
Yeah. If Napoleon had been successful in Russia, I don't think that was ever going to be a thing, so it's hard to answer. I mean, we have to suspend a lot of situational belief. Even if he had overthrown the government in Russia, I don't think the Russian people would have followed him.
There was no government to overthrow. They just keep on moving it back.
Well, yeah. Well, could he have taken land and held it without actually going full force and trying to take Moscow and try to make a point of? I mean, maybe that would have been the plan, to take the Ukraine and hold it, to take some of the viable farmland and the trade route areas. That would have probably been a better plan. If he'd done that, I think he would have been able to maybe force them into a better contract with them, and he could have continued to control them that way. Instead, there's other ways to control people without actually invading them, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that would have been his better plan. And if he'd done that, he could have maintained, like we could have had a united Europe under Napoleon, which precedes. We don't have the EU until 93 or 94. You could have created that there in the 1800s. Would that have been a lasting peace? Would that have been a moment where we would see Europe pull together and become a single country like ours with like individual
China?
States? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a possibility, I suppose. He got blinded with rage and greed, I suppose.
And when you march through countries left and right, you create some enemies. It's not like, England, of course, that would have been a tough one to.
You were never going to get that done.
Yeah.
That was not going to be a thing either. It's just, it's almost, as an island, it's as remote as Russia in a weird way, trying to cross over and take that land. Except trying to put political pressure on them and economic pressure and let them join in with the system because it was in their benefit to do so, I think would have been a better plan. So the invasion was really never going to work out, even if winter hadn't come early that year and decimated his troops. It's too far to go. You stretch yourself way too thin. The Russian people are way too different and way too independent for that kind of you have to get their government on your side, and that wasn't what he was ever going to accomplish.
Yeah. Okay, another question. I'll pick somebody else. Catherine Calandro says, what is your personal opinion on the concept of rewriting the Constitution to fit our current times? This is one of my pet peeves is when justices or judges, they're always trying to figure out the original intent of our founding fathers. What did they really mean with the Second Amendment? What were they really trying? I'm just like, who cares? Who cares what they really tried to do back 200 plus years ago? What do we need to do now? And I just don't like treating the Constitution like it's the Bible. It can't be rewritten. Don't touch it because our founding fathers were demigods who knew everything. It's crazy that we do that. We've only changed that document 27 times, and 10 of them were right at the very first.
Right.
So we haven't made many changes to that thing. Yes, it needs to be rewritten. And let's start with the power of the president. Good grief. And 1,000 other things. Obviously most stuff is handled at a local and state level. So we're not talking about everything. But I think the Constitution badly needs an update. We update iTunes every 3 days. Can we not update that document?
We need a new operating system. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Written by guys that didn't know what the atom was. They didn't know that there was another planet besides out of our solar system. These were people that didn't know much as far as what we know today.
But the problem we have is that we've venerated that document to the point where it becomes, like you said, almost like a Bible, and you can take that as a stand itself. If let's just look at religious text, and I'm not trying to be for or anything in this conversation. I'm just saying, look at it, rationally. Do people judge their daily lives and try to dictate what they're going to do and what other people are going to do based on, let's use Christianity for example, a almost 2,000-year-old book based on a 4,000-year-old story? Yeah, that's weird because we're not the same group of people.
Yeah.
But it's the same idea, is what I'm saying. So I don't know that people are ever going to let that, once you exalt something to that level of deification, right? And for religion, that's definitely true. But in this case, for the Constitution, it may be partially true. Then I don't know that we let those standards, that those people who we respect so highly, I don't know that we let those ideals go.
Yeah.
Or we let them easily go, maybe, even though we're very different people.
A lot of times we just reinterpret things to help fit our current times. The Constitution is it's blatantly written by our founding fathers who kind of knew. I like to do a thought experiment where I try to tell the students, how would you describe the internet to George Washington? Where would you even begin? Like, what's something you would even start with? Well, it's kind of like a TV. Oh, wait, you don't know what that is. It's kind of like, nope, no computer. It's kind of like a book that comes to life. You would sound like a demon. They would think you're a wizard if you just even talked about the internet to these people. But yet we treat the document they created, which, by the way, it's one of the best ever. I'm not trying to say it was a bad. I just think to say that it can't be changed and to focus all of our time trying to figure out what our founding fathers meant, these originalists is what they're called. It's just like a waste of time to me.
Their reality and our reality, rudimentary, are going to be the same because we have a general existence. We want freedoms and liberties and opportunities like they did, but at the same time, we've incorporated so many more people into the system. Yeah. In our lives because of the technologies and in our way of transportation and the ways of communication. All those things are so very different that a lot of what they said and wanted and the control factors they put in place aren't necessarily applicable in the same ways.
Oh, yeah. Like the Second Amendment's a good example of our founding fathers thought it was everybody's right to have the best guns. The right to bear arms. You can have, but they didn't see beyond the musket. Should we all have our own personal drones right now that we could attack, people, covertly? Should we all drive a tank? We had to adjust that and go, okay, maybe not everybody should have their own tank or nuclear bomb. So what kind of arms are we now? Because back then there wasn't very much. You know, so it's just
And they weren't very accurate.
right. Yeah, cruel and unusual punishment. You know, the 8th Amendment or whatever. That's what is some of the stuff they did back then? Be cruel and unusual today.
Right.
You know, so
Tarring and feathering. I know you showed the clip the other day from the Adams movie.
yeah,
A lot of people don't realize that was a death sentence for folks.
yeah.
Tarring and feathering sounds funny if you see it on cartoons. It is absolutely not that. When I was a kid, I thought it was, oh, it's hilarious. Look at that guy running down the street with, feathers on him.
That's not maple syrup they poured on you.
Boiling tar will not come off your body. It's going to scald your skin. It's going to scald your eyes. If it gets in your mouth, it's going to, right? You can't function. You'll suffocate. Then put as many feathers or whatever is on the person you can. And then a lot of instances, light the guy on fire. Like, that
would be
funny.
cruel and unusual
It's
today.
Very cruel and unusual, yeah. So
What if a judge did that today? You are now going to be tarred and feathered, everybody. All right. Well, anyhow.
is there anybody that you can think of that needs to be tarred and feathered?
Yeah, probably. No, I don't think so. I don't know.
Oh,
That's the
There we
bell.
go.
That
All
means
right,
that's
everybody.
the end of this podcast. So, yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Maybe on both accounts.